Why is it that every movie and documentary about Bruce Lee presents him as this gifted kung fu prodigy who seeks out Yip Man at an early age to start learning Wing Chun? They say things about how he's one of Yip Man's most gifted students, but they never talk about why Bruce Lee didn't really know enough Wing Chun to start teaching back when he left Hong Kong for America. And they never acknowledge him leaving Yip Man to go study with somebody else. Why don't we ever get the real story about how Bruce Lee learned Wing Chun as a teenager in Hong Kong? I mean, what's the big secret that no one wants to tell about why Bruce Lee left Yip Man's school? Now, I think the biggest problem is that all these Bruce Lee biopics and these semi-historical kung fu movies that portray Bruce Lee, they're not telling the truth. Take Dragging the Bruce Lee story, for example. Here you have a movie that's supposed to be based off a book that Bruce Lee's wife, Linda, wrote, but the biopic sets up this narrative for the movie screen that strays from the history that Linda told in her book. Here in the movie, you see Bruce Lee going to train with Yip Man in 1949. Yip Man has some kind of personal kung fu temple where he trains Bruce Lee as his own personal apprentice. So we're led to believe that Bruce Lee is some type of martial arts prodigy who spends 10 years training under the personal guidance of his Sifu. And the thing is that none of this is true. Yip Man had just come to Hong Kong in 1949 because he was fleeing Mao's liberation on the mainland. There wasn't some kung fu temple monastery because Yip was basically homeless in Hong Kong. He left everything when he left Fatsan. None of this stuff about Bruce Lee training under Yip Man and Dragging the Bruce Lee story is true, except for the fact that Bruce Lee did begin training Wing Chun under Yip Man. Now, to make matters worse, those Donnie Yen Yip Man movies that so many people love, those movies went to the opposite extreme. At the end of Yip Man 2, Bruce Lee's introduced to Yip Man sometime after 1950. So instead of meeting Yip Man when Bruce was 9, like in Dragging the Bruce Lee story, well, here he meets Yip Man when he's 10 or 11, and Yip Man tells him to come back when he's older. So Bruce Lee returns when he's about 18 in Yip Man 3. There's this whole scene in that movie of Yip Man throwing cigarettes at Bruce Lee, and Bruce is doing all these kicks and moves like we've seen in some of Bruce Lee's kung fu movies. And after all of that, Yip Man doesn't even accept him as a disciple. Now, how do you go from Bruce Lee being a personal apprentice to Yip Man from the age of 9 to Bruce Lee basically never having even trained with Yip Man just a few months before he's going to leave Hong Kong to move to Seattle? The point of what I'm saying is that these movies don't give us the real story about Bruce Lee training under Yip Man, and then the story about why he eventually left. The closest movie that touches on this subject is actually the most recent Bruce Lee biopic that was based on books written by Bruce Lee's younger brother Robert and his older sister Phoebe. In Bruce Lee, My Brother, there's a scene where Bruce Lee loses a fight. His friend suggests that he needs to study kung fu to improve his fighting skills, and one of them suggests that he learn Wing Chun. So his friend takes Bruce to Yip Man's school to introduce him, and one of Yip's senior students says that, well, Yip Man doesn't personally teach the lessons, but he'll be the one who'll be teaching Bruce. So Bruce then goes to actually meet Yip Man himself, who recognizes him as the child actor Lee Hsien Loong, or Little Dragon Lee, and he knows that Bruce's father, the famous actor Lee Hui Chin, is also from Fatsan, so he accepts Bruce as a student to come train at his school. Now later in the film, when Bruce Lee's training to compete in the Catholic school boxing tournament, it's that same senior student who's actually Wong Shun Leung, the person who's training Bruce Lee for the fight. Now, if you pay close attention to the training montage, Bruce is not training at the same school as where he first meets Yip Man. So now we're getting a better idea of the story. And the funny thing is that this movie was not authorized by the Bruce Lee estate, meaning Bruce Lee's daughter Shannon didn't give her sign of approval. And I'm unsure why, but, well, it conflicts with a lot of the story told by Linda about Bruce studying Tai Chi with his father and then started Wing Chun at the age of 13. So the question is this: if this movie that was not authorized or endorsed by the Bruce Lee estate gives part of the picture of what happened with Bruce Lee leaving Yip Man's school, well then why don't the other movies touch on this topic? The Yip Man movies make it sound like Bruce was never one of Yip's students at all, and they never tell the real story about how Yip started teaching Wing Chun in Hong Kong either. Well, the short story of that is that Yip Man started teaching people from the restaurant's workers' union, and he also lived in their building for a time too. They kind of allude to it in the first Yip Man movie. So the important thing to take away from this is that Yip Man was mostly teaching adults who were mostly taking up Wing Chun as a form of exercise. They weren't interested in going out and getting into street fights with other kung fu schools or to beat up on low-level triad members. That stuff is good for the movies, but it's a far cry from the reality of the situation. See, Yip Man is mostly teaching adult students in the restaurant workers' union until he finally gets his own permanent place around 1955. And now he needs more students because he's got to pay bills. And maybe some of them are younger guys who start to hear about the reputation of Wing Chun producing these great street fighters. So they come out because, well, they want to learn how to fight. So when you hear these stories about how Bruce Lee was this arrogant and cocky kid, which eventually led to his classmates trying to get him kicked out of the school, you have to remember that Bruce is this teenage movie star. 16 of Bruce Lee's 24 film credits as a child and teenage actor, they happened from 1953 to 1959. And if he actually started training Wing Chun at 13, like Linda's book claims, well, then he was pretty busy making movies and going to school all the way up until he leaves for the U.S. in 1959. Now, I hope this is kind of setting a stage for the scenario, but basically it boils down to this. Bruce and these other guys in high school are training at Yip's school with these older guys, and these young guys are really just interested in learning how to fight. And my point is, you had Yip Man, who, when he'd occasionally touch a student and give them a correction, well, they had no idea how he was manipulating their arms and getting in on them, and they weren't all that interested in the philosophy. Then you had some of Yip's disciples working as assistants who were all probably pretty amazing. But then out of all of them, you had Wong Shun Leung, the king of the talking heads. And this guy, he was him. He was the dude. This dude had it. And if I'm a young guy back then who hears Wing Chun as this amazing fighting art, well, I really want to be there learning from the guy who had the reputation as the top fighter in the clan. But anyway, so recall all the details from the story about Bruce Lee having to leave Yip Man's school. And then I also want you to recall Bruce Lee's experience going to his dad's Tai Chi classes when he was a kid too. In both of those situations, you had Bruce Lee going to these martial arts classes with older guys, and he was only really concerned with fighting and the effectiveness of the art when it comes to fighting. In the case of those Tai Chi classes, he was a kid who got bored hanging out with his dad's old Tai Chi actor buddies, so he stopped going. But in the case of the Wing Chun classes, well, the older guys, they tried to get rid of him. And well, like I said, there's always another side of the story. So you probably know from my other video that William Chung was one of the first who brought Bruce Lee to Yip Man's Wing Chun school. Bruce knew William Chung as a dude from around the way who got in a lot of fights, but he never seemed to lose. Bruce one day asked him his secret, and eventually, well, William Chung put him up on game. So here you have this kid, a movie star and the son of Hong Kong's top Chinese opera performer. Guys were beating up on Bruce, and they were giving him a hard time at Yip Man's school. But Bruce, being the obsessive type that he is, he started training outside of class with William Chung every chance he got. And with him having his own money from his own acting career, well, Bruce could afford private one-on-one lessons with Yip Man and his top assistant instructors. So Bruce started to improve rapidly, and pretty soon those guys who were roughing him up in class in the beginning, well, eventually they were the ones getting roughed up after a while. And as the saying goes, it ain't no fun when the rabbits got the gun. So the whole Bruce Lee is cocky and arrogant. You know that story where some jealous students find out about Bruce's mother being Eurasian, and then they bring it up to Yip Man to get Bruce Lee kicked out of the school? Like I said, there's always more to the story. Some of those guys were probably jealous that Bruce was improving faster than they were. So this all led to Yip asking Wong Shun Leung to teach Bruce Lee at his place so that Bruce could stay out of the regular classes at Yip's school and make everyone happy, and he wouldn't lose any of the tuition. The thing is, well, this was really what Bruce Lee would have wanted all along. So is it starting to make sense to you guys why Bruce would willingly leave Yip Man's school? He was there because he wanted to learn how to fight. And being sent to train with Wong Shun Leung, that meant that Bruce was now getting instruction under the top fighter among Yip's students. He was getting to practice outside of class with Wing Chun, and Wing Chun had a reputation as being one of the best fighters in the clan too. Not only this, but Wing Chun was also bigger than most of the kids Bruce was probably getting into fights with. And here's the thing, Wong Shun Leung, this guy had a tremendous impact on Bruce Lee. Like, it's really a shame that these casual Bruce Lee fans, the ones who get all their facts from movies about Bruce Lee and Yip Man, because some of the stuff in those movies are actually nods to Wong Shun Leung. This dude, Wong Shun Leung, like I said before, he was called Gong Sao Leung, the king of the talking heads. He had somewhere from 60 to 100 street fights, and this dude was the truth. This is the guy who Bruce really wanted to learn from, and he was the person that Bruce measured himself against. Bruce once wrote a letter to Wong Shun Leung saying that even though I'm technically a student of Yip Man, in reality, I learned my kung fu from you. Like I said, there are nods to Wong Shun Leung in the movies to show how important he was to Bruce Lee's development and to the spread of Yip Man's Wing Chun. Remember when Chin Jin walks into a karate school and then proceeds to beat up all the karate guys in Bruce Lee's movie Fist of Fury? Remember when Yip Man beat up 10 black belts in the first Donnie and Yip Man movie? Wong Shun Leung, he really did that stuff. He really was nice like that. All of these rooftop fights that the Bruce Lee fanboys like to brag about whenever someone brings up why Bruce Lee doesn't have a fight record. I'm sorry to break it to you fanboys, but Bruce Lee didn't have hundreds of Baymo rooftop fights. He may not have even had 10. He was an actor. He couldn't mess up his face. The guy who had all of those rooftop fights was Wong Shun Leung. This guy, Wong Shun Leung, had a tremendous impact on Bruce Lee's development and Bruce's accomplishments as a martial artist and as the world's biggest action movie star. Yip Man once told Wong Shun Leung that without his guidance and encouragement, Bruce wouldn't have achieved superstardom as Hong Kong's biggest star and the world's first martial arts movie star. As a matter of fact, it was Wong Shun Leung who personally trained and coached Bruce Lee for 2 of his most important fights, but that's a story I'll have to save for another time for all those people who say Bruce Lee didn't fight anybody. Look, y'all, the big takeaway is this. The movies, they never really tell the truth about Bruce Lee's training and his study of Wing Chun in Hong Kong. And because of this, well, it leads people to be split into 2 separate camps. They either stick to the official story that Bruce Lee started training with Yip Man when he was 13 years old, and for some reason, these people can't account for why Bruce Lee would train Wing Chun for about 5 years, but he was considered a highly skilled beginner by the time he moved to Seattle in 1959. Then you have the other camp that alleges that Bruce Lee never received any lessons from Yip Man because all of his training came from Wong Shun Leung, and that everyone is lying when they say that Yip Man taught Bruce Lee. And the truth is that it lies somewhere in the middle. Like I said, Bruce made the majority of his childhood films in a 6-year period from when he was about 12 up until he was 18. The records at Yip Man's school, according to David Peterson, a Wong Shun Leung disciple, they don't show Bruce Lee on the roster until around 1956, when Bruce would have been 15 or 16 years old. He was with Wong Shun Leung for about 18 months, so we can say that he spent 1.5 years at Yip Man's main school and then another 1.5 years with Wong Shun Leung before he left for America. Now, on top of that, Bruce was still taking private lessons with Yip Man, and then there's this. Well, Bruce Lee returned to Hong Kong several times before he finally returned to start making movies in 1970. There's pictures of Bruce Lee doing Chi Sao with Yip Man in 1963. There's pictures of Yip Man holding a baby Brandon Lee in 1965. And there's a picture of Bruce and Yip together taken not long before Yip passed in 1972. So it's not wrong to say that Yip Man was Bruce Lee's sifu, but it is wrong to say that Bruce never learned from Yip Man, because that's not the case at all. I mean, we have the pictures to prove it. A lot of this back and forth It comes from people who don't really train Chinese martial arts under these kind of circumstances, and basically people who just like to talk on the internet don't know what they're talking about. People who do a lot of Southern Chinese systems understand because they've experienced it. Unless you're some kind of close disciple or an inner door student, you learn mostly from a senior student or an assistant instructor. A big reason for that is because those senior students are also practicing their ability to listen so that they can determine your level of skill and how to appropriately engage with you for your lessons, and it helps them become a better teacher. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to check out the video that tells the other part of this story about why Yip Man stopped teaching Bruce Lee. And you can also check out this other video about Bruce Lee's opinion on Tai Chi, because it'll give you a better idea of the situation when Bruce is training with Yip Man's older students at the main school. And before I go, I hope you guys all keep training, remember to breathe, and come back to see me on the next video.